and I'll answer some of them together. So here are the questions that were sent to us in advance. There are some Jewish people who accept Jesus as the Messiah. What do we say to them? What is the significance of wearing a yarmulke or a kippah? Why is Friday our designated day for worship? How much time a week do you dedicate to your faith? That's a trick. I've never gotten that one before. That's a good one. What are the significances of each holiday and when are they celebrated? What is Judaism's viewpoint on Jesus? How significant is the concept of the Messiah in Judaism? Does any part of the New Testament factor into Jewish belief? And as members of the Jewish faith, do you consider being Jewish solely a religion, or can it be considered both a religion and an ethnicity? And finally, what is kosher and how specifically is it kept by the Jews? So let's start there. Raise your hand if you keep kosher in your home. I mean, we're talking kosher. So I hope that sort of gives you the answer, whoever asked that question. In our congregation, most people will keep some version of kosher on call it a sliding scale. It's what could broadly be called kosher style. Some people don't keep kosher at all. Reformed Judaism believes in allowing people to make their own decisions through what we call informed choice. So it's not choice out of laziness is not choice. Choice because you've thought to yourself what's meaningful for you and the way in which you want to value our tradition and what sacred eating looks like for you. That would be a reform understanding of maintaining a way of sacred eating. Those who keep strict kosher, that would be by a certain set of rules. It's an extensive set of rules. The simplest ones or the most known ones are that you separate milk and meat, which extends to that separation often extends to the plates that people use. They'll have two sets of plates. They may even have two ovens, one for milk, one for meat. It also means that there are certain foods that you don't eat at all, and that would be generally shellfish and pork. There are a lot more rules, and again, like I said at the beginning, just like our page numbers, nothing is simple for us. It can't just be like eat healthy. That's not that easy. But it does make if somebody keeps kosher in the strictest sense, that means in Akron it would be near impossible, I would say, to eat at a restaurant, for instance, because all of the restaurants, a vegetarian restaurant could be considered okay, but most restaurants serve pork or shellfish, and they mix milk and meat in their kitchen. There are kosher restaurants in major cities. Cleveland has a few, and other major cities will have more. But it's not something, I would not presume that most Jewish people in America keep a strict level of kashrut or keeping kosher. I want to answer all the Jesus questions. And I want to say that I get these questions a lot when I visit college campuses and when I talk with interfaith groups. And here's my way of trying to explain it. They're great questions, so don't take my answer as by any means reprimanding the question. It's very hard, I believe, in America, unless you do the work like many of you are doing tonight by reaching out and trying to understand other faiths. It's very hard to understand that religion and Christianity, in the broadest sense of the term Christianity, are not synonymous words. So here's my metaphor. We have people who play baseball. Any baseball players? No? Basketball players? Any baseball? No. People who like baseball? People who like it? Sorry. Okay. All right. So let's say, so asking a rabbi about Jesus, and again, great questions. But asking Jewish people about Jesus is like going to a baseball game and saying, "Where's the basketball?" Does that make sense? They're both games. The goal is to have fun. The goal is, perhaps you might say, to win. But religion would be the game, right? So if you are active in religion, then you're active in games, if we take the metaphor out there. But if I'm Christian, then I play baseball. I play by a certain set of rules. I have a certain ball. I have certain items like bases. The stadium looks a certain way. If I play basketball, I also have rules, but they're different rules, and it's a different ball, and the two don't really talk to each other. In other words, we don't talk about Jesus. We don't have any problem with Jesus. It's not part of our game. It's not part of the rules that we follow. We don't have the New Testament. So we have Hebrew Scriptures, which, by the way, an important point that often I think gets lost is Judaism did not stop growing as a faith or as a study when Christianity started. Judaism continued to write more books. So Judaism is both old and new. The Judaism we practice is not the Judaism that Jesus practiced. He practiced the Judaism in his time. Since Jesus' time, Judaism has grown by thousands of years and changed. So we practice a Judaism that may have been recognizable for the last 400 years. But if you go too much far before that, if a Jew from 400 years ago were to walk into this synagogue, he probably wouldn't know what was going on. There would be lines that you could draw as to how things changed, but you can't just go back and say, well, Judaism stopped as a religion 2,000 years ago. That's not how our religion worked, or any religions for that matter. Friday is our day for worship because it's actually not Friday, it's more Saturday. Jews, we start our holidays in the evening when the sun goes down. That's a whole longer answer I can share over donuts as to why we do that. But we start our holidays in the evening, and our Sabbath is following the order of the book of Genesis and the days of creation. There were 6 days in which the world was created, it says in the book, and on the 7th day there was rest. So we count our days. Friday night is the beginning of the 7th day. The 7th day is Saturday. Sunday starts a new day, right? A new week, rather. So Sunday is day 1. So that's, if you go to Israel, they work on Sunday. And they end work usually early Friday. So Friday evening begins our holiday in our congregation. Friday night is the time when we get together to pray most often. Many congregations have very active Saturday morning worship service. And people who observe a traditional Shabbat observe it by not working, not using electricity, not driving, up until Saturday evening when the sun goes down. The kippah is, I'm going to try and fire through some of these quickly. The kippah is much like wearing a necklace with a cross on it, or with another symbol on it. It's a way of showing a sign of an outward sign of respect. It also covers male pattern baldness very well, and it's been a very successful, long before there was ever any medicine. The Messiah, there was a question about the Messiah, which is a great question. Judaism does have a concept of the Messiah. However, it's a slightly different concept than what is, and I'm admittedly generalizing my understanding of Christianity. So I'm saying this is, broadly speaking, Judaism's understanding of a Messiah, or better said, of redemption, is a communal public redemption. So we believe that, first of all, we don't talk about Messiah very much. It doesn't come up in our prayers very much. It doesn't come up in our sermons very much. It's not a concept that we talk about on a regular basis. The afterlife is the same thing. We don't talk about heaven or hell very much, if ever. Those are not common topics for us. But when we do talk about redemption or a Messiah, we usually will say a messianic era, meaning that there will be a time in public when people as a community will know that the world has been perfected. By comparison, and I know I can't speak for any or all of Christianity, but by comparison, often redemption in Christian terms is often said in personal terms. I am saved. Personally, it's a spiritual redemption that I personally experience and that I know has happened for me. The Jewish idea is much more public and, one might say, not so spiritually focused as it is maybe justice focused, in terms of the world will be fixed. And so that's how we often talk about social justice as our form of redemption. Some people do call themselves Messianic Jews, or it was, for a time, it was called Jews for Jesus. That was one of the ways in which that group defined themselves. From within the Jewish community, that's not considered being Jewish. So once you accept another testament, if it's the New Testament, once you believe that Jesus is an extension of God or part of God, then you're outside the boundary of, again, I'd go back to my sports analogy. Now you're playing in a different game. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's just not the same game. So that we would say that's a part of Christianity. Let's see. Is Judaism a religion or a ethnicity or a culture or a food group? All of the above. And most Jewish people find themselves dancing in and out or categorizing themselves in multiple ways. And it may change throughout their lifetime. They may start off mostly secular or cultural. They may become religious at one point, have a bar mitzvah. They may become secular again. We may move in and out of it at times. I'll tie this in with a question about holidays. Because one might presume that celebrating a Jewish holiday is a religious act, which I would say it is. But many people might not define it that way for themselves. So there might be many Jews who even belong to a synagogue but say, I'm not really religious. I'm not going to ask people in this room to raise their hand if they would say that. They may celebrate Hanukkah. They may celebrate Shabbat even. They may go to they may celebrate other holidays and practice other rituals. But if you were to ask them, they might tell you that they don't believe in God. We have an understanding, the word Israel, which is how we refer to our people, not only the state in the Middle East. We call ourselves the people Israel. Israel in Hebrew means the people who struggled with God, or the one who struggled with God. And so we're accepting of the idea that somebody can question God, that somebody can have varying beliefs about God. In the modern era, we're accepting of people who might say, I don't even believe in God, but I feel very Jewish. That's not contradictory for us, certainly not in our congregation. And by that they mean, I feel very Jewish, we might say ethnically. I feel very Jewish in my heart, but I don't necessarily believe in the practices of Judaism, or I don't believe in the dogma of Judaism. I don't necessarily believe in God at all, but I feel very Jewish. People can say that, and people do say that all the time. I know that can be confusing, but that's one of the ways that the Jewish community has, it's been one of our strengths, actually. As I imagine most of you know, a lot of Jewish history has been fraught with threats against the Jewish people, and we're very small people in number. And so sometimes we've been threatened as a religious group, sometimes we've been threatened as an ethnic group. And so I believe one of the pieces that has helped us to survive is the fact that we are not entirely one or the other. We've been able to integrate into society. We've also been able to stay separate from society. We're able to do different things, not that others don't, but that's definitely a strength in the Jewish community. I think I got most of them. How much time per week do we dedicate to our faith? That depends. How guilty you feel, I think, is the first. I would say generally, to try to give what I think is the question, an answer to what I think is the question. In our congregation, the expectation would be that you would come to the service on Friday night and spend some time on Shabbat, carving out some time for your family. We don't define it as a hard rule. It needs to be 25 hours, which is what the traditional timeline is 25 hours from the beginning of Friday night until Saturday evening. Our expectation is people define that for themselves, much like the way they eat. But we gather on Friday nights to celebrate the beginning of Shabbat. We hope people go out and make Shabbat meaningful for them in other ways. We have other celebrations often on Saturday. We have Torah study on Saturday morning, and a number of people celebrate Shabbat that way. But I would say most people would expect to give about an hour of their Friday to Saturday, specifically focusing on the rituals and religious practice of Shabbat, and then hopefully spend other time with their family and doing things they love to make it a day of rest and a sacred day for them. So we're going to stop there.